of introduction, we have as our guest today Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi, a consultant psychiatrist in the NHS, a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and a member of the Regional Executive Board of the Southeast Division of the Royal College of Physicians. He also served as a psychiatrist expert witness, providing specialist opinion to the UK judiciary on complex cases. He is also a trauma and faith-informed executive coach, an author, and a serial public mental health columnist. Dr. Ajayi is a multi-award winning founder of a tripartite care emotional well-being hub, a safe and culturally sensitive global online platform where mental health is discussed through a culturally relevant and scripturally aligned lenses. He is also the convener of the Tripartite Care Mind Gym courses, a mental fitness program tailored for Black communities, and hosts the Tripartite Care Public Mental Health YouTube channel, a recognized mental health advocate and engaging international speaker. Dr. Ajayi has been featured multiple times as a mental health champion and spokesperson for the Black community in the United Kingdom Department of Health Every Mind Matter campaign. Dr. Ajayi has contributed to numerous BBC interviews and appeared on television and radio platforms, both in the UK and internationally. Above all, he treasures most his roles as a devoted husband to his wife, Dupe, and a proud father to their two adult daughters, one of whom herself a CBT therapist. So please, we pride ourselves with our time. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to our speaker for today, Dr. Taiwo Ayodele Ajayi. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Oluwaranti, for that very warm welcome. It's really a delight to be here this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm most delighted to be here, and it's really a joy to be back home. As one of the things that is missing in my profile is that I'm actually an alumnus of OAU myself. So from 1987 to 1995, I was in the Obafemi Awolowo University College of Health Sciences. So it's really, I count this one of the most noble privileges of my career so far in public speaking, to be invited back to my alma mater to speak. And I'm just going to share my slides. I'm quite aware of our time, so I'm going to share my slides and we can take it from there. Could I just confirm that everyone can see the slides? Please just give me a thumbs up or just let me know. Yeah? Right.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Right. So, like I said, it's really a joy to be here. And I absolutely believe this slide. When I was preparing for this brought back very fond memories. And I really believe that OAU is a great university. And the reality of that is something that plays out in my own career and the career of a lot of my colleagues across the globe every single day, as I see the great things that the university has produced. Interestingly, when Professor Oluwaranti and myself were talking, it turned out that we were both at IFE at the same time, even though I didn't realize it, and that we have quite a number of mutual friends. So I'm really pleased to be back, and I rate this speech, this presentation, as probably one of the top 5 that I've done in the last 23 years. Probably I've done maybe a few hundred of them talking about mental health. Right. So this is a disclaimer. It's one that I put out anytime I'm in public space, but I'm not worried because I'm in the midst of friends and family. So I'm not worried about litigation or anything like that. But just to say that this is not a consultation by any means. It's a public mental health education event, and it's not meant to be for any personal consultation. So it means that if people need to do something deeper in terms of taking decisions about their own mental health that will be far-reaching, it's important that they consult with the primary provider of the mental care. And also that we've been told that this is going to be recorded and it's going to be in public domain. So one of the first lessons I learned as a medical educator is this, that when you're a medical educator, the best way to handle things is to talk to people about what you're about to tell them. Go ahead to tell them what you want to tell them. And at the end of the day, you then tell them what you've told them. So I'm hoping that now I'm telling you what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to go ahead to tell you what I wanted to tell you. And then I'm going to give a summary. And that's basically what's work, really, because a lot of times we use certain languages that we become so used to, but we don't really check their roots. So what is work? What is stress? Stress is another one that we use often. Why is work stress important? What's the link between work stress and mental health and even physical health? And then how can we manage stress? I'm going to be sharing a model that I've used and that we use in tripart care that we find it's an umbrella model and it works very well. And I'm going to share one personal reflections. Usually when I speak in public space, I try to be as human as possible. I'm not coming as somebody who has this so much clinical exposure and has been exposed to so much mental health that I don't have personal experience of work-related stress myself. I've experienced burnout myself, so I know what it feels like. So not only am I speaking as a professional today, I'm speaking as a person, and I feel the pain of anyone who is undergoing unmitigated work-related stress. And then we're going to share some resources, and then I'm going to summarize again, as I said, and then we do a Q&A. All of that within a 40-hour span, so a 40-minute span. So let me just keep myself to time. Okay, brilliant, 12:17, right? Okay, so you see, the interesting thing is this, that a lot of us, I'm sure that, and I honor everyone who is on the call today, by the way. I know there are lots of senior colleagues, lots of professors, people who have really put in the hours, maybe some of my senior medical colleagues as well who are here, or maybe some of my colleagues might even be here. So I do give honor to whom honor is due. And we do know, as people who present in public, I believe that most people who are in academia would one way or the other be presenting in public, that we have a law that is working against us. And that's the law that talks about the forgetting curve, that 50% of what I'm sharing now within the next hour will be forgotten if we are not active about the way we take it in. Sadly, 70% will be gone within the next 24 hours. And within the next week, 90% of them would have disappeared like you never had them before. That does not make me happy, but I can't do anything about neuroscience. It is what it is. But I can do something about the way you receive this information. We do know that when people record things that they've heard, by archiving them, when they take action quickly, when they hold themselves accountable to somebody who's going to check in on them, and when they set themselves assessment periods as to this is I'm going to measure my progress, and importantly, when they review the content of what they've heard within the next 24 hours, and then another maybe within the next few days, that they are more likely to retain a lot more than that grim statistics that I've just shared. So the ethos of this slide is, please record things. Please take quick action. There is a law of diminishing intent. Maybe some of us might be aware of the work of the late American business philosopher, Mr. Jim Rohn, who said that the law of diminishing intent states that the longer you wait to take action on anything that you know you need to act on, the less likely you are ever going to act on them. And I'm sure that we can relate. The last conference we went to, the last training we went to, the last message we listened to, and we thought, oh, this is my moment. This is going to change me. It's going to transform my work, my life. But then it didn't happen because we didn't take step immediately. So over the course of this afternoon, very quickly, this can be a little framework. Just setting the background for what we are going to be talking about. But importantly, how am I going to use this knowledge? What's the new knowledge I'm getting? How am I going to apply it? When am I going to apply it? Why should I apply it? And what could hinder me from applying it? Also, what could support me? Because many times we get new knowledge and we're so enthusiastic about it, but we don't think about the ifs and buts, that life does happen. And there are things that could hinder us or enhance us. But importantly, what is the next single simplest step that I can take this evening? After today, what's the next step I can take as an investment that I really mean business and I really want to manage stress? So what is work? Work is the way we've always known it. It's simply any activity that anyone engages in, no matter their gender, their age, their sex, any activity that they engage in that produces a product or produces a service. That service or work could be used by somebody else or it could be used by themselves. And that includes employment. It includes unpaid training work. It includes volunteering. And that's the definition of work. Interestingly, it was only in 2013 that the International Labour Organization, which is an agency of the United Nations, defined what work is. So what is stress? And that's the crux of the matter. That's what we are talking about this afternoon. Stress, according to the Royal College of Psychiatrists, stress is the way that our body and our minds react when we are confronted, when we are struggling to cope with the pressures of everyday life, when we are struggling to cope with the pressures of work, when we are struggling to cope with the pressures of life changes, distressing life changes, sometimes important life changes, or also sometimes big events that sort of threaten to change the trajectory of our lives. When that happens, there are changes in our emotions, there are changes in the physical symptoms of our body, but importantly, there are changes in the way our body begins to operate. And some of those changes I'm going to look at very quickly. So stress has been given a bad name. And I know that might sound a bit interesting to you, thinking, but we're here to talk about work-related stress and how to mitigate it. How can you say stress has been given a bad name? Because there's good stress and bad stress. And many times the word stress, we've given it a bad name. Everybody thinks stress is bad. Stress is only bad when it's chronic and it's unmitigated and it's not managed and it's excessive. So stress only becomes a problem at work when it's unmitigated, when it's unremitting, and when it's excessive. That's when it causes possible physical problems, but also mental difficulties. And without mincing words, let's just call a spade a spade. Mental difficulties, work-related stress are very closely associated with mental difficulties. So it's not if and but, there is clear evidence showing that there's a link between chronic work-related stress and mental difficulties. So what is good stress? Good stress is really about, you know, when you get into a job and it's not stretching you, it's not challenging you, all the intellectual prowess you've got, all the masters and the PhDs, and some of us have 2 or 3 of them, all the thesis to become a professor, all the things, all the papers we've written. Sometimes we are in a job that is not stretching us, and that can also be as counterproductive. So that's a healthy form of stress. It's a place where nothing is really stretching you. But then we need to move from that place on the red left part of the column of the graph to a place where the work that we are doing is really stretching us, it's demanding our intellectual capacity, stretching that and demanding us, and we feel that we are contributing. As that stress continues, it gets to a peak. And when it gets to this level, that's where we are at our optimal performance. That's the period of maximum efficiency. When there is additional stress, maybe longer hours, maybe more lectures being taken on, maybe more supervision being taken on, maybe supervising a PhD candidate, anything that then adds to that pressure, what tends to happen is, rather than our performance improving, the performance begins to go down. And then we get into the period of strain. This is when we become hyperactive. We might not be able to sleep at night. We might not be able to eat well. We might not be able to turn off at night. It's just that it's almost like one is on a treadmill 24/7. It might begin to affect our relationships. When all of this is happening and nothing is done about it, then we get to the place in which there's emotional and physical exhaustion and burnout. Burnout is simply 3 things. One becomes cynical about work. The work that used to give you joy and enjoyment and fulfillment becomes something that you just loathe. You just can't stand work and you become cynical. Secondly, it affects your performance. Your productivity goes down. And thirdly, you have both physical and mental exhaustion, no matter, and it's a type of physical and mental exhaustion that resting does not take away. It doesn't, a good night's sleep wouldn't take it away. And the reality is, even by that time, there's no good night's sleep anyway. So what has this got to do with mental health? According to the World Health Organization tells us that there is a very close, that our work, our ability to be able to produce work that is meaningful, that is purposeful, and our ability to be able to contribute to community is part of the definitions of mental health. So simply, mental health is our ability to cope with the stress of life, to still be able to function optimally, to be able to do work that is meaningful, and to be able to maximize our potential and to contribute to community. So work is a very important part of mental health. And that's why today's conversation is important. So now, how can we join all of this together? We've talked about work, we've talked about stress, we've talked about health. How does that come together? The first thing to say is that decent work is good for mental health. That's why work is not the problem. It's when work stress becomes overwhelming and unmitigated that there's a problem. So work by itself is good for mental health, as the WHO slide that I showed. But also, work stress causes mental problems. Let's not mince words about that, that if there's unremitting work stress, mental problems can result, namely, particularly anxiety and depression. However, this is where it comes very close to home for you who are listening today, that there are high levels, research shows that there are high levels of psychiatric distress among academics. In fact, some study, and for those who might be interested, I can pass on the references to you through Professor Oluwaranti. Some studies actually showed, there's a guy in Chelmsford in the UK who did a systematic review on work-related stress among academics. Akin Loton is his name. He actually found that, in fact, some academics report more psychological distress as a result of their work than physicians do. And we know that physicians, I've been a doctor for 31 years now, and I know that being a doctor is associated with high stress levels. However, that study shows that academics actually, some of them report that there is more stress than even compared to doctors and healthcare professionals, which tells you that you are actually in a high stress job. And there was also another study showing that more than 50% of academics describe very poor or very poor mental health. What are the risk factors? Females are more at risk. People who are single are more at risk, and people who don't have children are more at risk. That's what they found out. And they found out that the predominant disorder that is most reported is anxiety disorders. That anxiety disorders, and there's a prevalence between 17 to 58% among people who work in academia, which is quite high. And also among the student population, that up to 70% of students report high levels of anxiety. Now, so we've established that it's not okay to shoulder on. It's not okay to man up. It's not okay to keep saying, oh, it's the system that is bad. Let's just keep enduring stress, because stress can break minds. Stress can break lives, particularly when it's associated with work. And we do know that people in academia are at high risk. So also, generally for work, the lower part of the slide talks about just general work-related stress. 60% increased risk of anxiety and disorder, anxiety and depression when you work more than 55 hours a week. I know some people might be smiling and thinking, what does Dr. Ajayi think we are doing here? Does he think we just sit around? I know that most of you work more than 55 hours a week, because I do. And I know, but that's the thing, that what can we do to manage this stress and ensure that it doesn't get to our mental and physical health? And if it's already managing doctors, which it can be quite an interesting job, and also being a medical education lead. So there was quite a lot on my plate. It looks like somebody, there's some background noise. Right, okay. So I wanted us to reflect, using that previous slide, I wanted us to reflect on what stress really means to us. What is work-related stress to you? Because everyone's stress is individual. There are 8 billion of us on Earth, and each one of us responds to stress in a peculiar way. And there's no one size fits all. So it's important for us to reflect. And I'm going to keep quiet in a minute, but the things I want you to reflect on is this: what exactly is work-related stress for me? What is the leading stress or trigger in my line of work or in my work? Why is it a problem? And how do I know that I'm getting stressed? Is it that I'm not able to sleep at night again? Is it that I begin to snap at everyone, including my nearest and dearest? Because unfortunately, work-related stress spills from the boardroom into the living room and into the it spills from the boardroom into the living room and into the bedroom. It spills everywhere when there's stress, work-related stress. So what are the experiences that I've had, exposures that I've had, or education that may be actually enhancing that stress? And importantly, what's the simplest single step that I could take today to really mitigate things? And I'm going to give ourselves a minute to do that. I'm quite aware of time, so I don't want to go on, but I just thought it's important to reflect on this because this is the crux of the matter, because in a minute or so now, we're going to go into solutions. Okay, right. So the question I now want to ask you is, how stressed are you? These are the things that can begin to sort of trigger thoughts and make you feel that maybe, are you taking on too much? Do you feel that your plates are so full that you are not able to be present? Do you have difficulty delegating? Are you an extremely competitive and aggressive person in everything that you do? Are you beginning to use harmful ways such as alcohol, even sometimes now prescribed medication, painkillers, sleeping pills to numb the stress? Is it affecting the intimacy in your relationship? Do you feel that you are not able to relax ever? You're almost always tense, muscle pain. And particularly for our men, I'm a middle-aged man myself, so I can relate. A lot of us men are carrying chronic stress. And rather than name it as stress, we name it as every other thing. It comes out in the way we interact with our families. It comes out in the way we do life. It comes out in anger, in irritability. It comes out even in more damaging ways. Sometimes it's road rage. Sometimes all sorts of things that it manifests: anger, uncontrolled anger, and it's really unmitigated stress. Because men, we are not very good at articulating and saying that I'm stressed, or that I'm depressed, or that I'm anxious. We don't have those languages, and so we tend to manifest them in other ways. So do you worry about little things, little events of the day, or when one of the giveaway signs is this: when everybody goes to bed and your head hits the pillow, then you begin to replay everything that happened over the course of that day. Maybe sometimes after a stressful day it could happen, but if it becomes a pattern and then for hours and hours you're not able to go to sleep, it may actually be that you are dealing with unmitigated stress that is beginning to take a toll on your mental health. And these are the things that can happen when it takes a toll: change in appetite, decreased libido, hypertension, dementia are all chronically are related to chronic stress responses. Heart disease, including heart attacks, type 2 diabetes, arthritis. In fact, we now know that chronic stress is associated with chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is the bottom line, is the pathogenesis or the background thing that goes wrong in most physical and mental difficulties. And of course, that can be manifested as addictions. Even obesity. We now know that if you are chronically stressed, you can't lose weight. You can go to the gym from now till tomorrow. You can eat healthy from now till tomorrow. You still will not lose weight because your body, the hormones that are raging in the body are telling your body that it's not a time to lose weight, it's a time to hold on to the weight because there's a crisis. So those are and those are things that we need to be aware of. And of course, addictions, and that could be from gaming to alcohol to nicotine to infidelity to moral failings to pornography. We know that all of those things, particularly among men, that we can use chronic stress to address those things, which we can try to attempt to use those things to address chronic stress. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's the internet. And what happens to the brain when we are chronically stressed? One, there's reduced brain volume. Particularly the frontal part of the brain. The frontal part of the brain is the executive part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's the most beautiful and most creative part of our brain. It's the last part of our brain to develop and is the one that is responsible for decision making, for self-control, for mood management, for emotional regulation, and is the place where creativity occurs. It's the place where we do our best work. The sad thing is that when we are stressed for long enough, the prefrontal cortex begins to thin out. We begin to lose literally brain cells in our brains. The other thing that happens is that also the area of our brain that is associated with learning and memory, hippocampus, begins to also be tampered with, begins to thin out as well. And this is where it gets more scary. The part of our brain that is the alarm system, the amygdala, becomes hyperactive so that every molehill becomes a mountain. People who are chronically stressed misinterpret signals. Everything becomes a major disaster. Everything that doesn't go right becomes a life event. And the reason is because the brain has been tampered with, because chronic stress damages the brain. And that's the reason why we are doing this today. I'm beginning to wrap it up now because I'm aware of our time. So now, one of the things, and I encourage us to listen to this again and to look at the slides, do whatever you need to do to get this and to really do something about it. Because the challenge is that, I mean, let's face it, chronic stress is associated with diminished life expectancy as well. And the good thing is we can do things about it. There's something we can do. The little steps do add up in the end. And one of the things I encourage everyone to do when they're feeling that way is to think about the cycle of control. Currently, we've looked at what exactly is it that makes me stressed at work. The next question is, what can I do about it? And this cycle of control or resilience exercise is a good one to do. One, look at all the things that are happening, all the stressors in your work. Categorize them into two circles. One of them, the inner circle, is what I have control over. The outer circle is what I don't have control over. I don't have control over how many lecturers are employed. I don't have control. Really, I may not have that much control over my workload, but I may. I do not have control as much over the climate I work, whether ASU goes on strike, and none of those things do I have control over. But rather than focus on the things that I don't have control over, we know that stress, one of the key principles of stress management is to focus on what you can change. Because when you focus on what you cannot change, you keep feeling disempowered. And as long as you feel disempowered, you're on the back foot when it comes to managing stress. So it's important to focus on it. And then when we look at the things that are within our circle of control, let's rate them. Is it that I don't like supervising this PhD candidate who is so rude? Or is it that my boss is insubordinate? What exactly? Or I have maybe I have a graduate assistant who is insubordinate, or who doesn't do the work, or who doesn't pull his weight, or who doesn't know what they are doing. What exactly is the stressor, and which of them is the top one? Let's rate them 1 to 10. And after I've rated them 1 to 10, which is the first one I want to take on? Just take on one at a time. Interestingly, usually, if you take on the most important one, many times what people find is that the other ones that are under might actually fall into place. And I know this sounds very theoretical, but I challenge you to put this into practice in your line of work. And if you would do it the way it should be done, then I guarantee you that over time, there will be results. Over time, there will be results in the way we respond to stress and the way we even manage it and identify it. Importantly, this is one of the things I want to say about these slides is that our work, that's the task. Our work is right at the pinnacle, it's right at the top. And the interesting thing is this, that it's built on all the other foundational things. If any of this has not been addressed, it's difficult to manage work stress, because many, many times it's not the work that is the stress. Many, many times we find out it's the underlying things. People don't cave in just under work-related stress. It's when there are other things that are happening that things become a problem. So we can, because of the time, we can't look at every single one, but I'll just look at a few of them. Trust. You see, we know research shows us that when we adopt a spiritual approach, and I'm not talking about going to church or going to the mosque here or praying or not praying, that's part of it, but that's not what I'm talking about here. That when we adopt a spiritual approach to work in terms of my work as a purpose, it has a meaning that people who are like that tend to get more fulfillment from work even when it stretches them. That there is a purpose I'm building. For instance, now when I think about all the professors that taught me, Professor Roger Makanjuola, Professor Bode Balogun, Professor Bayo Adetiloye, Professor Ajayi, when I think about all those people now and I look back, really, when they were teaching me, they were building the next generation of doctors. They were building, in fact, the next generation of healthcare shapers globally. I mean, when I think about the impact that my colleagues are making across the globe now, and at the time, I'm sure it would have been stressful. It would have been demanding. But it's about sometimes managing stress is about what is called a cognitive reframing, about looking at things in a different way and putting a different spin and meaning into it. So that happens. So it's important for us. What is the meaning of my work? What do I enjoy about it? How can I incorporate that more into my work? I enjoy teaching. Public speaking is not a big deal to me. I enjoy it and I try to do it as much as possible. That's why I host an event on mental health every single month, which I'm going to share with you very shortly. And I try to teach as much as possible. I teach a lot of medical students and all of that. That's something I enjoy, and that's something that tempers the stress of being a psychiatrist with all the baggages that come with that. So it's about what is meaningful to my work, but what is also stressful and what can I do about it? How can I change it? Some of the things quickly. Emotional intelligence. We can learn to become more emotional intelligent. We can do a personality test, and some of them are free online, which I'm going to share in the section on resources. We can go on a conflict management course, because I do know that conflict resolution must be something that a lot of people here deal with. And those are the things that we can do, because sometimes in managing stress is about also developing ourselves to be able to face the thing that is causing the stress, so that we are more equipped to face it. So, and the next question is, what is the single simplest step I can take today to move things forward? As we are rounding up, the other thing I said earlier, that at some point I had to say no when I was burnt out. And the question I want to ask us today is this: what are the tasks that I'm currently doing that I need to say no to, that I need to decline completely? And what do I need to put in place? Because after I burnt out, there were several things I put in place, believe you me. One of them was to develop a team. I used to be the only one that was, if they called me, anywhere they called me, I was the one that went, either physically or was on the Zoom. Now I have a team of people, other younger psychiatrists, about 4, 5, 6 of us, and other people in the paramedical profession, in the medical profession, that we can delegate to. So everybody is playing to their strength. So that means that I'm not the only one that is doing it and carrying it on my head. It does work. The other thing is to then sort of look at our work schedule. What is it that is urgent and important that I'm the one that needs to be doing this? What is it that I can delegate to other people because it's not that important, but it's an urgent task? It's not important for my role as the HOD, for instance, but it's important. I can delegate it to another lecturer colleague, or I can even delegate it to a teaching assistant. What are the things that are no longer important and not urgent that we are still as a system doing, and it's creating stress in our system? Those are the questions to ask ourselves. And this is a method, I think it was devised by one of the American presidents, Eisenhower. Eisenhower was one of the American presidents, I think from the 18th or the early 19th century. So the other thing is, one of the other ways to mitigate stress and deal with stress, to rise up to stress, is to equip my body 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I know people think, oh, which planet do you live on? But we now know that when we don't sleep well, we are cheating ourselves. One, our brain doesn't recover. One, two, it wears out our brain. Three, it affects productivity. The greatest myth of the 21st century is that we can increase productivity by cutting back on sleep time. It never happens. Research over research shows that if you don't sleep well, you can't compromise on sleep. If you compromise now, it will be waiting for you in your latter years. It will be waiting for you in your 60s and your 70s, if one makes it to 80, because we do know also that chronic sleep has been associated, chronic sleep deprivation is now associated with dementia, developing dementia in latter life. Exercise is one of the most things, one of the most remarkable things we can put into our work. And I know you might say, oh yeah, where do I have the time to exercise? The way I exercise now is that after I have my lunch at work, sometimes I have a walking lunch because I know at least I can put in 10 minutes of walk, and we know that has several other benefits. And we have overflogged aerobic exercises, running, jogging, walking. There's also now emphasis being put on building our muscles. I know I'm talking to 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 50-year-olds who think, oh, do you want me to start pumping iron? But the research is now showing that those who pump iron, that when we pump iron in our early year and middle years, that it actually not only helps to reduce stress, but in the future that we are going to get the dividend of it, because muscle development is now associated with managing glucose. And one of the measures that people are even talking about in terms of managing diabetes and all of that is really not just aerobic exercise, but strength exercise, muscle building, not just to look good like Mr. Adonis, but to help us in our general, because when our body is not at its optimum place, then our minds cannot work well, and we are at a back end, we're at back foot when we are fighting stress. Early exposure to sunlight. Exposing yourself to sunlight within the first hour of the day has also been known now to, when you do that within the first hour of the day, when you expose yourself to naked sunlight, in terms of not through a window or anything, you're actually in the sun. We now know that also throughout the day, it sort of levels your cortisol levels, such that is not a problem, that you can't spike cortisol as much as you would do. The other thing, of course, is engagement with nature. Diet is a very important one. High carbohydrate diet for breakfast is not something that's really particularly helpful. So this is putting it all together. What can I do? What's within my control? What's outside of my control? These are the possible, These are the possible things that we can do, resources that we can use. Those are resources as well. The slides are going to be available anyway, so people can refer to them. These are the resources that I use in managing my own work-related stress. So I can recommend it because I know they work. One of them is Neuroscience for Leadership, a very good book, really about how can I be a good leader using neuroscience to really help myself. Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery is what I'm reading currently. It's by an American neurosurgeon who himself experienced post-traumatic stress. The final point I want to make is this, before I then go to the commercials, is that corporate stress management is a responsibility that we owe, that the organization owes employees. I have fond memories. Thankfully, I didn't experience it. And thankfully, it wasn't that of a problem in health sciences. But I have fond memories of colleagues who were in other courses when I was in university, whom, when they told them who was going to be the lecturer supervising them for their project, their heart sank, because they knew that it was trouble, because they were difficult people, and they were people who were difficult to deal with. And the question I want to ask us is, stress works in an ecosystem. Everyone either contributes to that stress or takes away from it. And whilst we are looking at managing personal strengths, we need to also, as leaders in this organization, be looking at what am I contributing to make life difficult for my juniors, for people who are my subordinates. Am I inadvertently being the source of their own stress? Because it may well be that whilst we are talking about our own personal stress, maybe we're actually the source of stress that somebody has named today. These are all the other things that Tripod Care does. We do coaching, we do workplace mental coaching, we do public health speaking. I think this is a suite of courses. Bullying in the workplace, I think, should be a relevant one to follow after this particular lecture, I think. And that's a WhatsApp group that I operate for leaders all over the globe. We rub minds together about really managing mental health, not just for ourselves, but for the people that we lead. So it's not just for ministers, but it's also for leaders in charities, in organizations. And that's a generic one, particularly. It's also another WhatsApp support group. We have a book club. That's the book club. We are currently discussing the body keeps the score. And that's my contact details. And finally, that's the question and answer. Thank you for listening. I know it's been a bit of a wait.